Now, the three-day ceasefire hadn't even officially ended when the first rockets were launched towards southern Israel. And Israel didn't waste time in launching airstrikes on the Gaza Strip in response. Well, earlier I spoke to our reporter Inigo Gilmore from Tel Aviv and asked him whether it would be difficult to get the peace process back on track.
Well, absolutely. The Israeli army says that over 50 missiles, rockets and mortars were fired from Gaza into Israel around the time and after the time when the 72-hour humanitarian ceasefire ended. Hamas has been saying for some days now that they feel that their demands are not being listened to at the ceasefire talks in Egypt, and they did warn that they may start firing missiles again. It seems also Islamic Jihad, another militant faction in Gaza, were also firing rockets. Israel says that some civilians were injured, and Israel also responded with airstrikes, which we understand killed a young boy in Gaza. The Israelis are saying that they will not resume ceasefire talks while under fire, and so of course at the moment these ceasefire talks are in the balance, but the Egyptians are saying they need to get the ceasefire talks back on track and everyone needs to return, stop firing and return to those talks.
Inigo, we led the programme last night on claims from a former Israeli soldier that soldiers in Gaza knowingly shot dead a civilian, and this is of course one of around 1,000 civilian deaths in Gaza over the last month. Is the Israeli military investigating these deaths?
Absolutely. I mean, we spoke to an Israeli activist himself, a former soldier, who said he took testimony from 3 soldiers about what happened in Shajaya neighborhood, where a number of civilians were killed. And in particular, he referred to this incident of a sniper, he said, that killed a Palestinian man. We have raised this story and this issue with the Israeli military since yesterday. They are saying that no new evidence is forthcoming. Just because we've been told about this testimony from this former soldier, they're saying there's no new evidence from their side that's been put to them. And so there's no real development on that front. I would just add that these cases are incredibly complicated. Even if a Palestinian from Gaza wanted to bring a case against the Israeli military, it's a very, very complicated procedure which would involve the third party, and that's very hard to do. And if you look back to Kar-Sled, only the operation in 2009 Gaza, only 4 soldiers were prosecuted and they all got light sentences. All of this is happening, I should add as well, in the context of a great sense of intolerance in the country and overwhelming support for what Israel did in Gaza. And in that sense of intolerance and that sense of attacking people who dare to speak out against the military is something we've been looking into in our report tonight.
He's known as The Shadow, an Israeli rapper from Tel Aviv. His latest song is threaded with nationalistic, ultra-Zionist lyrics, calling on the nation to unite behind the Israeli army. He's hardly known for his musical prowess, but The Shadow has gained notoriety during this latest conflict in Gaza. He's been coordinating right-wing demonstrations, often in response to left-wing anti-war protests. And he's been accused of fomenting hostility towards those who dare to criticize the Israeli military. His entourage called themselves the Lions of the Shadow, and we went to meet one of them at what they called their headquarters, a small apartment near Tel Aviv.
This is the contribution business, the center of it. What we have here are closed boxes.
Their activities involve sending donated handouts to soldiers.
Get boxes because clean underwear are luxury if you're after 2 weeks of fighting.
And campaigning against Israelis who've criticized the war.
The war, they're protesting against the army. They're protesting against the people who protect their right to protest.
But sure, they have a right to protest against the army.
Of course, they have the right. But I want those people who protest against the army to be known. So I film them, and I bring them on Facebook, and I let people know.
Of those who've been named, many have been denounced as traitors, and some have lost their jobs or had their businesses boycotted.
It's very emotional for me. It's very emotional for me because I know I was one of those kids. I got injured for my country, okay? And I fought for my country, and I gave myself to my country, and I did it until last January, willing to risk my life every time my country called me.
One of those who's been targeted is journalist Gideon Levy, who recently wrote articles in Haaretz newspaper, which were highly critical of Israel's military actions in Gaza. In a video they posted online, the Shadow and his associates chased Levy down a street, hurling abuse and denouncing him as a traitor.
גדעון לוי הוא באמת פרובוקטור מהסוג הנמוך ביותר.
The chairman of Israel's governing coalition, Yariv Levin, went one further and told Channel 2 News that Levy should be tried for treason. Such is the level of anger towards him, he now has to have a bodyguard.
Do they feel emboldened now, do you think?
I don't know, but I know that nobody can stop them because nobody wants to stop them. I am afraid that the scars will remain here and Israel will not be the same place it used to be, because I think those wounds in the Israeli democracy, those cracks, are here to stay. And people who were afraid to demonstrate this time will be even more afraid to demonstrate tomorrow. And they will continue, because nobody is here to stop them.
From towns in the south to the sun-kissed beaches of Tel Aviv, the operation in Gaza was sold to the Israeli public as necessary to protect the nation. In the past, ultra-nationalists were on the fringes of Israeli society. But this war has brought them more into the mainstream, while pushing critics of the army to the margins.
That's all from Channel 4 News tonight. A very good evening to you.
Good evening.